Shut up and sit down.
Welcome to the Bricks King podcast, where I'm going to bend your ear about Lego, review those amazing bricks of plastic, discuss what is new and up and coming around the Lego world. I'm your minifigure host, Matt. Let's bet on it. Welcome in, everybody. How are we doing today? Hopefully you're doing quite well. We are back with another episode, a recap of Lego Masters, this time episode number 4. It is definitely something that I was waiting for, keeping my eyes on it, and now we can finally discuss it. So without further ado, let's go ahead and kick right off into it, because there was a lot that went on with this episode. It's very unique, very different, and frankly quite difficult. So the challenge was called Build It by Ear, and Jamie gave the explicit direction of saying, hey, you've got to use power functions in it somewhere. Some teams did better than others, but you know, that goes without saying with all kinds of things very, very often. So each team had an opportunity. They said go, and they had an opportunity to go grab whatever sound they wanted. Obviously, if you're the first one there, you get it. If you're the third one there, you get whatever is left, and so on and so forth. However, Sam and Nina, here's what they got. Their build was called One Flew Off the Cuckoo Clock. They got the sound boing, and it was pretty much like a mixture of cuckoo clock sounds that are just kind of all mixed together. It was it was different. I will say that it is a different sound, but it definitely fit. So putting the build the way that they did, going in that direction was very, very smart. Now, the first thing, that build, no joke, stands at 5 feet tall. It is a massive clock, like a grandfather clock. It is massive. And just the sheer size of it. I mean, it's 5 feet tall. It had to be, oh my God, I'd say probably 1.5 feet in diameter. Obviously it was square here, but still, just huge. The footprint of this thing, and then the height, and just impressive. So the idea behind this, the story behind it, is there was a cuckoo bird that fell out of the clock and is running around in circles around the base. And it is actually literally spinning power functions in a circle around the entirety of the base of the build. So that was kind of neat. I did like that, the way that was done. They had these green little brick-built gremlin guys that are trying to put the clock back together. And it's, they're intermixed throughout the build. I wanted to say there's probably 4 or 5 of them. Nothing giant or anything, but they're really cute the way they were done. Now, the cool thing was the gears on the inside of this thing were moving. They weren't just there for decoration. There were probably 20 gears in there, and they were moving, and it was like pulling back the curtain, right? You're pulling back the curtain. You're able to see the inner workings of this. And I thought that was really cool. The pendulum also swings. I mean, obviously the gears are moving, but then the pendulum, the big pendulum they have built there, was swinging back and forth. I thought that was nice. Honestly, it's just, the build was just a lot of fun, in my opinion. I thought this was a really, really well done build. Much better than what they dealt with last week. Completely different, pulled a 180-degree flip just like that. So Poppy and Ben, their build was called Hydra Attack, and theirs was roar, not that weak and horrible, but you get the point. So their build is actually really nice looking. They had a 3-headed dragon that is essentially tearing apart a chemical plant, which, they did really good job of. Without having to tell me what it was, I could determine what it was. It was almost like going to an octane factory and, destroying it, or the beginning of tearing it apart. So that was kind of neat. They had a little container, I guess, that had chemicals in it or whatever in the front, like a shipping container, and it would just move down and then back and then down and then back towards like the foot of the dragon, Obviously some movement there, just not anything wild. And then they also had little mini fighter jet builds spinning around the top of this this dragon and stuff like that. Like they were attacking it, trying to get it to go away. And I do like the scale change right there. I thought that was really nice. I thought it was cool. I really loved the idea behind it. Allison and Melanie, theirs was called Monster Meal, and their sound was snarl. It sounded more of like a like the sound of a big cat, like a cougar, panther, something like that, a big cat type of snarl. So their idea is two monsters at a picnic. The brother monster falls asleep and the baby sister monster is tickling his nose with a feather. I thought that was depicted quite well also. And, the head of the big brother monster, rotates in a circle. I thought that was kind of neat. Big red build. And I believe hers was, I can't remember what color hers was at this point. I want to say it was green, but I don't think so. Anyway, the way that they managed to build these things out of plates and bricks, I still felt like I wanted to squeeze them, like give it a giant friggin' bear hug because they look so fluffy. I could not get over how well they did it. And, you can really get texturing and stuff like that done. If you think like, I don't know, like the Star Wars Chewbacca model, right? Super expensive thing, but has a lot of texturing to it. And you can kind of feel like the hair and the fur, that kind of thing going on with it by looking at it. I felt the same way here, but in a much, they don't have all of those refined pieces and the same colors and stuff like that. So I think they did a fantastic job with that for the idea that they were given. So I did forget to mention that these two monster bear type deals they're having a picnic. So you have all the little ideas of a picnic basket. You have a picnic basket and, all the little kind of all the things that aren't super important to the build, but, let oh, this is a picnic going on. And the food is actually being stolen out of the picnic basket while she is tickling her brother's nose with a feather. They're being stolen by minifigs that are supposed to be like ants. It was absolutely hilarious. I couldn't get over how well done that was. Just the, shifting gears to look at it in the opposite direction. You know what? Let's say, what if minifigs are stealing? I love it. Super, super cool. So we move on to Tim and Tim. Their build was called the Great Wilroni. I'm sure it has something to do with Will. No. And their sound was Twinkle. So again, this is kind of a mishmash of sounds, but it definitely does have a twinkle to it at the end. Like you could think of maybe like a star twinkling kind of sound, something very fairy tale-esque. So they had that. And what they did is they had a magician build. Apparently this magician is trying to perfect his rabbit trick. And the only person that came to his show is his mom. And they have this tiny little brick built character. It's his mom that's sitting down on the table off of the stage. So their magician actually didn't look all that bad. The rabbit was on this little kind of like table that had a divider. And there was a rabbit built on each side. They were identical. And this thing would just rotate, spin around. So there wasn't any other movement, but at least they have the movement function there. They had some lighting for the stage, but there really wasn't much else. And it was a really bizarre looking stage. Initially, when I looked at it, I was like, okay, is this kind of like done like, we're supposed to look at this as more of a miniaturized scale? Because it looks like the way their stage was done, like it was almost like some kind of boxy type build. If you were somebody that was sitting in the audience, your head is tilted way back trying to look up at this stage because it was so much higher than the ground level that people were at, which I thought was kind of odd. But then the other thing is the green, and I'm glad the judges had brought this up as well. The amount of green was insane. I understand it was a magician. I got that. I understood that, but it just looked so weird. like the green did not match or mix with what this should have been. So Amy did mention that she would have loved to see like a reveal on the opposing side of the bunny, right? You have bunny on one side and then something else on the other side. Maybe you make it a little skeleton, the bunny lost all its fur and the skin on its bones, all that kind of, I don't know. Anyway, and she also brought up the green. And as soon as they displayed this thing, I was like, holy crap, what is this thing? Jamie also had some comments, and he had mentioned and told them not to pivot over and over. So that was an issue with them, where you change ideas. All right, we're going to adjust and do this. Or, okay, now we're going to adjust and do that. And you got to remember, you are on a confined time scale, and there's only so much that you can do, only so many times that you can adjust your plan without, potentially it being a massive issue. Next up, we have Aubrey and Ryan. They did Mess on Brick Jupiter. Their sound was burr, 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 which it was a weird sound. So let me give you the rundown of what they built. So a space alien ship crash landed on this planet on Brick Jupiter. The spaceship does rock back and forth. Anyway, they're trying to be able to get fuel to be able to get off of the planet. And that's like, if you have ever seen some kind of space movie, I'm thinking like right now Armageddon, and they're trying to get the ship started and it just goes like it's not starting, right? That's kind of what their sound was. And that's kind of what they went after their build. Like the ship cannot be completely out of, like it got semi buried into the ground on the planet and can't get out. And that's the trying to get it out. So it's a weird sound, kind of like the idea behind it, I thought was really cool. So the spaceship does rock back and forth as it's trying to get out. So there's their movement there. They also had some other moving things there as well, but I'm not really sure what they were. Like they had this, like if you were to take 2x2 round bricks and kind of push them together to make a longer strand, that was rotating around. I'm not really sure what that was for, but nothing that I was like, oh, I know what that is, or, oh, I know what that is supposed to be doing. So one of the first things that I had noticed about the build was it just looked like a planet of cheese. A lot of the yellow bricks and multicolored yellow, it seemed, all those bricks it made it feel like cheese, like that, like you were landing on a cheese planet, which is fine. I probably, in my opinion, I would have gone with a different color, or different colors, but that's just my opinion. And the other thing about that is it just looked like a lot of bricks that were just kind of stuck together in no real kind of layout of like, okay, well, we're going to tier this here or whatever. And, they had some detail on the landscape, but nothing like they have done in the past. They did have a lot of brick-built aliens. I thought those looked pretty good. But overall, the build just seems to have been missing something. I'm not exactly sure what. The planet surface was an issue for me. I do know that that Jamie had mentioned the spaceship build. He wished it was more detailed. They spent more time on that and not so much on the landscape. And I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, if the landscape isn't that great and the ship isn't that great, well, where was the big great thing there? I'm not trying to be super harsh or anything like that. I'm just saying based on what I saw. So maybe that is the thing that is missing, the extensive detail in general on anything. Now we move on to Lewis and Alex. Their build was monkeying around and their sound was like ooh, So of course, monkeying around was perfect. The idea is that they have this teacher that is trying to teach this class, and you've got these monkeys monkeying around, essentially brick built. One of the things that I noticed, the heads of these monkeys were of a size, not as big as like a brick heads figure, but if you were to take a brick heads and chop it off in half, that is about the size of what the heads look like on this. They were super detailed. I loved the big body build of these. Like they weren't super tiny. They had actually kind of extended, the legs and the torsos and stuff like that. They got the most out of it. If that were a set, $10 just for one of those, I'd buy it. I would absolutely buy it. I thought it was super cool. Anyway, so you have these brick built monkeys that are in this classroom setting. It's pure chaos. They're not listening to the teacher. They're doing all kinds of things that they're not supposed to be. And you've even got one that's hanging from a tree. They have a tree that is on the exterior of the build. And it's nice because you kind of have this little classroom build, but then it's like they cut into the wall so that you could see like the inner workings and what's going on inside of the classroom. So I thought that was neat, but you have one that was hanging from the tree, and that is where their movement was. And it just moved back and forth. So it moved the monkey to make him look like he was swinging with their power functions. I thought that was really nicely done. The thing that I came away with is the entire build just looked refined, completely finished. No details that needed to be added. Nothing else needed to be done. And I know the winner of LEGO Masters this season, their build is going to be turned into a set. I would buy this. I think this is absolutely freaking adorable and hilarious. As a teacher, I would love that. I would love this thing. Super, super well done. So now we move on to Christopher and Robert. Their build was called Alien Conquest 2 Electric Boogaloo. Their sound was zap. You know, if you think of any kind of zap, that is essentially what they are going. So they have this spaceship that is built hovering over a farm or over an area where there are farmers. And the tractor beam of this thing, it's brick built. And then they have it where the chain is going up and about. And, you know, they've got little bricks on there and stuff like that. All these different colors, kind of like blues and whites. And they even attached minifig. So when it cycles around, you see this minifig being drawn up into the spaceship. And the spaceship actually had quite a bit of detail. I loved the build. I thought that was great. But then, you know, they really captured my heart because the farmers, tractors, I'm a giant tractor person anyway. Like I can go to a tractor dealer and stand there and just be in awe. And then I want to go hop in a cab of every one of them. And if I can't intentionally drive it, I want to pretend that I'm driving it, damn it. It's just what I want to do. Anyway, so these tractors turn into mechs. So, you know, my heart is there. Like I'm immediately smitten. I'm like, oh my God, this is incredible. So, but they turn in ready to fight this alien spaceship to, you know, save the people around the farm. I thought that was a really cool idea. Paul and Nilita, their build was called Who Stole My Cheese? And their sound was squeak. And think of it as like a dog toy, a squeaker in a dog toy or anything, an animal toy like that. That's essentially what it sounded like. So they had this crib build with a baby in it. The idea was they're from Wisconsin, but the idea is that this baby had its cheese and its baby sister, who in this case is portrayed as like a mouse, I guess, is trying to steal the cheese and stuff. So you have the baby in this crib. The power functions is that the foot of the baby is kind of semi squishing the sister, the mouse, that's taking his cheese. So I thought that was kind of funny. And I couldn't pause it and get a good enough shot to look at it, but it looked like there were almost other mice that were under the crib. So I do like that idea. I thought it was kind of neat. Some of the small details, you know, on the baby and the mouse are nice, but as a whole, like the crib, I understand. It's just a crib, man. It's just a crib, right? I understand that, but it felt a lot like the fire truck that they did. I think it was 2 episodes ago. It was just kind of very square. There weren't a whole lot of details that were on the crib, which is fine. But it just kind of left me like, okay, I love the idea, but there's really nothing here that I'm like, okay, this doesn't elevate me to anything. Like I'm not super stoked by it. I'm not like, oh my God, I've got to have this. So anyway, so on to Emily and Kelly. They had the Lonely Robot. Their sound was badonk, and it almost sounded like not like a cartoonish badonk. It reminded me of like, if you've ever seen one of the Transformers movies by Michael Bay, and especially in like one of the first 2, and you hear the foot of the Transformer when it hits the ground, It almost kind of sounded like that. It was that weird kind of thud to a certain degree, but it wasn't a thud. It was very, I guess maybe mechanical. I don't know how I could classify that. Anyway, so there were two robots, one who's been alone forever and he just wants to build a friend so that he has somebody else to spend his time with. There was nice greebling on that robot, a lot of blue, but some nice greebling on the outside. I thought of it. The arm, I think it was the left arm, had a hammer in it and was moving up and down, and it was tapping on the other robot that was in the middle of being built. You know, obviously you're hammering on it, doing something. And then also the heart inside the robot was spinning around 360 degrees. So I did like that. So you also have a little workbench and all the accoutrements that kind of sell this build even better. I thought it was really nicely done. But then it did feel like something was missing. You know, the other robot didn't really have any detail on it yet. It was just a bunch of green, but it is being worked on. So I do understand that. But here's something that I found interesting that Amy had said to them. She said they went big, but at the expense of complexity. And I definitely can see that. You did go with a big build. I don't know where she's looking for complexity. Are you looking at it, you know, hoping that this other robot is doing something? Like, I'm very curious. Like if that was a question that I could have asked her post show, you know, Amy, hey, what did you mean by this? Like if I were Emily and Kelly, well, what did you mean by that? Like complexity and where? So I thought that was kind of an interesting comment. I just didn't know where she was really, really going with it. So let's go ahead and talk about our best two here, our top two performers. Sam and Nina, of course, they were going to be up there, right? That build was exquisite, no doubt about it. And then we had Lewis and Alex. Lewis and Alex had to be up there. Why? Their build was immaculate, gorgeous. Both of these builds were like, holy cow, I could have that clock in my house without a doubt that Sam and Nina built. And then I would love the monkeying around thing as a set just because it was super fun. So it came down to Sam and Nina are your winners. And believe it or not, they get the golden brick back. How do you go from getting the golden brick to losing it, being in the bottom two, to to winning it again? You know, this up and down. I don't know that I could take this. So then we have our bottom two. Our bottom two were Tim and Aubrey and Ryan. I could not believe Aubrey and Ryan were considered bottom two, but nevertheless, they ended up there. So obviously somebody has to go home. This time it was Tim and Tim. Tim squared. T time Tim 2, whatever. So they went home. I absolutely see why they went home. And, you know, they become, we add to the basement dwellers. We've got two new basement dwellers for this episode. You know, Aubrey and Ryan are now in there as one-time loser. And Tim is a one-time loser in the basement. So, you know, it kind of sucks. No doubt in my mind, it kind of sucks. So the other thing, let's go ahead and talk power rankings, because power rankings have definitely shifted this week. Before I say that, though, last week when we did our power rankings for the last episode, Tim and Tim were at 8 of 9 teams. And they did not move a whole lot at all since we've done it. And it's just kind of like, you know, you hover around that bottom and it's just a matter of time before you get picked off. So anyway, let's talk about our power rankings. We'll go from the bottom, number 8 this week. We have Emily and Kelly. Why? They obviously move above Tim and Tim, who are gone, but you know, are they able to move above Neil or Paul and Nalita? I don't see it. I think Paul and Nalita's build was better than Emily and Kelly's, but I don't think Emily and Kelly's build was as bad. I shouldn't say as bad. Is not the same level where they were, right? This was definitely a step forward for them, but it's not enough to move the needle far enough to jump somebody like Paul and Nalita. At 7 this week, this is a fall from grace. Aubrey and Ryan fall all the way from first down to seventh after that bottom two showing. This was not a build I was expecting from them at all. And as soon as it got showed on the episode, I was like, oh no. And it was one of those things I was like, okay, because I believe they were a little earlier on in the episode. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, there's got to be some things that are worse than this, right? And then you look at the names in the list and some of the class of quality of builds that they're fighting against. And you're like, I don't know. These others have been bringing it. So definitely a fall. And, it's the same as Sam and Nina and Sam last week. They dropped from their first spot the whole way down to number 7. You can't have these giant, rises and falls without having a consequence to it. So then in 6th place, we have Paul and Nalita. They were in 6th place last week. I think it just has to stay there. They didn't elevate above anybody, but they also didn't, drop. They were consistent with what they do. At 5, we have Allison and Melanie. They're staying in the same spot again. I thought their build was nice. It definitely didn't give me the, oh yeah, it's going to jump somebody. Now you could argue with me that maybe when you hear my number 4, that they could be above them, or it could be at a tie. And I'll tell you why I don't think it's a tie. So our number 4 team this week is Poppy and Ben. They dropped from 3. And the reason they dropped from 3 is because they got jumped by a couple teams. Anyway, so Poppy and Ben drop. Here's what I was saying about Allison and Melanie and why I don't think that they could have been, 4 and 4A or whatever. While I think Allison and Melanie's build was really good, I actually think it was better than Poppy and Ben's this week. We're taking in the whole, what has everybody done throughout the season? And I don't think, even though Poppy and Ben's build was not as good as it could have been, I don't think Allison and Melanie move up because of it. There were shortcomings in Poppy and Ben's build, but again, I don't think it's enough to justify them slipping past Allison and Melanie, at least not yet. So at number 3 this week, we have Sam and Nina. Sam and Nina moving up after bad showing last week. Really bad showing. So they are moving up to number 3. You should be, some of you are going to be saying, well, Matt, why not P1? Why should they not be in first place? Again, whole body of work. Where were they last week? They were in the bottom 2. They fell in the rankings hard because of that. Do I put them above Lewis and Alex? No. Lewis and Alex have been consistent every single week. They've been there every single week. And frankly, I don't know how they have not won it yet. It's blowing my mind. Anyway, so the build was great. They deserve 3rd spot. To me, they had to climb up so far that they couldn't jump everybody. And in 2nd place, Christopher and Robert, again, body of work. I don't think Christopher and Robert have quite 100% hit it yet. I think we're going to find out here in another week or two, on an episode or two, that they are going to be there. I'm calling it now. I think that potentially next week, when you hear what the challenge is, they could be right there in the top 2 next week. So obviously that leaves Lewis and Alex number 1. Again, consistency is key. They've been there. They just haven't, last week after Sam and Nina just dropped into the basement, and Aubrey and Ryan had an incredible build. It's like, okay, they should absolutely 100% be there. Without a doubt, they should, be there. And yeah, anyway, so Lewis and Alex are first. Moving into next week, it's going to get wild. I already told you it's going to get wild. I don't think this week Tim and Tim going home was a shocker to me. I honestly thought it was just a matter of time, maybe another week or two, and it just happened. Now, the question is, looking at this list, I told you Emily and Kelly have been hanging there at the bottom. You're grabbing onto that last thread and you're just hoping that you don't fall out. And I think they're going to have to, barring somebody else completely dropping the ball like Sam and Nina did last week, it's going to be rough. I don't know. We'll see what they do with the challenge. Anyway, so next week on the episode. They are stunt performers. The Cirque du Soleil people are there, I guess, doing whatever. And they have to create stunt performances made out of bricks. And they are being put into 2 super teams because you have 8 teams left. They're being put into groups of, well, there's 16 people. So four pairings. Anyway, so they have this giant square that they're building on. And what it appears to be is that each builder on this entire giant build is building a separate corner of what it looks like. I guess, I don't know if it's, if they're all supposed to be intermingled as far as the story goes, as far as the context goes. Obviously, they're going to be judged individually on their build. I just don't know what it looks like as far as stacking them as a super team. But I will be curious to see who's paired with who. Which partners are paired with who. That'll be interesting. So that's gonna do it for this episode. I thought the actual episode this week, the actual Lego Masters episode, was not that bad. It felt better than the volcano last week. I like this a lot better, probably because there's a little bit more storytelling, and trying to build based on a sound is completely weird and definitely difficult. So that'll wrap it up until we meet again. I'm your minifig host, Matt. Let's build on it.